So to say that 2023 is going to be a mega important year for Canoo, well, it's sort of like saying that dude Patty Mahomes kind of knows how to toss the pigskin around. Yep, this is going to be a make it or break it year, and we're feeling optimistic and even a bit excited. With some good old-fashioned roll up the sleeves hard work and a dusting of good luck, production is going to be reality soonish. So with all that said, let's take a look at the competition, and yeah, there's more than you think. What's up, Motorheads, and welcome back to Gearbox Pizza. And sorry for the sort of long break between videos, but man, I mean, like, everybody's sick right now, right? I mean, myself included, and until recently, my voice sounded like I accidentally swallowed a steampunk-style leaf blower, or that I was sort of the head of a particular type of family, like New Jersey style. Anyway, we're back at it again with some Canoo action, and we're gonna take a quick look at all sorts of electric van type things today. Before we start, I'm sure many of you are at least somewhat interested in scoring yourself a Canoo. So I got a question. What else are you looking at? What else do you think you're gonna be considering? And hey, look, I'd really love to know, and this might help me focus on some future content, so by all means, drop a comment, let me know what else you're looking at. All right, so let's get into it. All right, so first up, and something I'm sure most people are somewhat familiar with, and that's the Chrysler Pacifica EV. So there's already a decent hybrid of this thing that'll go about 30 miles on electric power alone, so that's cool. The all-electric version will be all new, obviously, and there's rumors that this fella's gonna be styled a bit more SUV than minivan, which is good news. I mean, I wouldn't exactly call the styling of the current minivan inspiring. It's pretty damn generic if you ask me. And if you think about it, SUVs have dominated the market over the last decade or so, and I attribute much of that to the general populace developing a serious allergy to minivans in general. So go back like 30 years, and yeah, minivans were almost, dare I say, like sort of cool. I mean, the once soccer mom issued people mover has been replaced with a variety of three-road SUVs, and I get it. But that's also why I'm personally so bullish on Canoo. It still looks nothing like a soccer mom minivan sort of thing that we used to know, right? Okay, so is the Pacifica EV real competition? Well, sort of. Look, anytime one of the big boy car makers decides to enter a space, they usually have the know-how and the resources to do just that. So if Chrysler says they're making it, well, they're making it. But a couple of things. They've hinted at a Canoo beating target range of about 400 miles. That, and they're planning on building out this like temperature controlled frunk sort of thing. So the range sounds great, right? But look, anybody can target any range they want. I mean, pulling it off is a whole nother thing entirely. But hey, I hope they can do it and at a decent price, but I'm a little doubtful. Here's the thing though, and from what I can find, I really wouldn't expect this thing to hit the roads anytime before 2026 or so, which would give Canoo a decent head start grabbing market share. And not to spoil anything, but this is sort of a theme moving forward. Canoo is just going to be early to the market compared to much of its competition. I mean, not all, mind you, as the Xbus is surely going to beat it, but there's a lot of others on the list that are still several years away from being real. So next up, we got something straight out of China. So there's a few offerings from China on the list, but I don't want to spend all that much time on them as, yeah, look, they're basically like, there's little to no shot of us ever seeing these things stateside for a whole variety of reasons, but globally, they're competition, so I think it's good to know that these things exist. This fella is the Xpang MPV, and there's just not that much to see. We got this short clip showing this thing set up in full camo that apparently was taken close to the Xpang factory. Again, not a ton of info here, but it looks like this thing's gonna go on sale towards the end of 2023, and it's looking to be a little expensive. According to the company's vice chairman, this fella's gonna be priced at about $60,000, which, I don't know, does kind of seem like a lot. So, is this thing real competition for Canoo? Nah, look, not really. I mean, first thing's the price, which makes it a bit more expensive than a comparable Canoo. And then there's the whole Chinese thing, as in, yeah, look, we're just not going to be seeing them here anytime soon, so just not that much to worry about. So there's several more Chinese vans coming out, most of which look a little bizarre, and I just question how relevant they are to us in the West. I mean, we'll see how long this video gets, but I'll probably end up just skipping several of these, but it's good to know they exist, or, well, will exist. So from not real competition to perhaps the biggest competition facing Canoo, and yep, time to talk about the Volkswagen ID Buzz and ID Buzz California. So we've already done a pretty comprehensive look at the ID Buzz, so feel free to give that a watch when you're done here. Since then, there's been some new info, and I think we just have to start with the price. So originally, it was thought that this thing would enter the US market with a starting price of around 40 to 45 grand. And considering what you get, that would have been a pretty decent value, I think. But there's some bad news here. So some pricing info has been released for Europe and specifically the UK, where it's scheduled to be priced at just over £57,000, which unfortunately translates to about $70,000 US. Now, I really don't think Volkswagen has any shot of selling these things here for that kind of money, as look, things in Europe and the UK tend to be a bit more expensive than they are here. I mean, not exactly sure why. Probably has something to do with the taxes. Like, if you know, enlighten us in the comments, would you? Look, having said that, I really think the absolute best case scenario is a starting price in about the mid-50s. And even that might be a little optimistic. Anyway, let's put the price aside for a second, as otherwise this is serious competition for Canoo. Now, styling wise, even though I might not love the way the ID Buzz looks, I think it's pretty well designed, and at the very least, it's sort of new and interesting. Look, I'm sure it's going to resonate with plenty of buyers for sure, and I'll give Volkswagen some credit for pushing it a bit here, even though I think they could have pushed it a bit more, as, look, side by side with the old school VW buses, it's actually pretty boring in comparison. I mean, I don't know, maybe a missed opportunity, but time will tell. At the very least, though, it's easily cool enough to solve the whole allergic to traditional minivan thing. So yeah, it'll claw back some buyers who weren't even considering a van and were set on like a big ass SUV, so I dig that. And then there's this pretty darn sweet California edition that, well, it's sort of a turnkey van lifer's wet dream. I mean, this is pretty unique, and for those who want and can afford this thing, they're gonna turn into brand ambassadors for sure. Okay, so motor and range wise, the ID Buzz might get the nod slightly, although the Canoo's gonna easily be a bit quicker and a little bit more fun to drive. The ID Buzz probably beats it out in the range department, but not by too much. And then, look, back to the price. And getting right to the point, if the ID Buzz is indeed going to be priced as high as it seems, well, this is specifically very good news for Canoo and their investors. I mean, not only will Canoo be within financial reach of many, many more people, I mean, there's just not all that many people dropping 70 grand plus on a new car these days, although it's way more than it used to be. But also keep in mind the fleet sales aspect, and Canoo just sort of wins here easily at these prices. All right, so let's stay in Germany for this next fella. Here is the Mercedes EQT, which is the all-electric version of the T-Class, which is basically an upscale version of the Renault Kangoo. In fact, this will be built alongside the Renault and the Nissan Townster in a factory in a town I can't pronounce somewhere in France. Initially, the standard length version will be available at launch, but there's going to be a long wheelbase version along with a pretty cool camper version of this thing, which looks pretty interesting actually. You probably won't have to wait that long either, as the regular version should be available towards the end of 2023. The long one and the camper one, they're gonna come after, but like, I wouldn't expect the camper to be ready anytime before like 2025, but hey, I could be wrong and I sort of hope I am here. So far, this is looking pretty solid, right? Well, there's a few issues. Firstly, as it stands now, this is only going to be available in Europe, at least for the time being. I really hope they bring this stateside, as I think manufacturers just might be underestimating the potential size of the market for these sorts of things. So obviously being available just in Europe, well, although that's generally bad news for consumers, it's probably good news for Canoo and their investors. That's not the only strike against this guy. The battery is a little bit on the small side at 45 kilowatt hours, which is going to translate into a range of somewhere between like 150 and 175 miles if you're lucky. And then there's the motor, which is a bit of a disappointment. Now, I'm not saying that all these things need to be able to shred tires with 600 plus horsepower, but this Benzo's only packing 122 horse. That's sort of crazy. And as you suspect, acceleration is like as exciting as a winter NyQuil induced nap, with 60 miles an hour coming in well over like 13 or 14 seconds. And I'm not even sure what the top speed might be here. And then there's the price. Not a ton of info here, but it looks like this thing's gonna start maybe in the low 50s, which when compared to Canoo, well, sort of makes Canoo seem like the value leader here, right? So all in all, I really don't think this is a big time competitor to Canoo, and it's pretty simple really. First, You won't be able to get one of these stateside for a while at least, and there's the range and the motor, which Canoo sort of just dominates head to head. So next up we're headed to Korea, and well, you know, the good one, not the Hermit Kingdom Rocket Boy one. We got a couple of interesting things to look at. One from Hyundai with the Staria, and then there's the Kia Carnival. So both of these guys exist today as run-of-the-mill gas-powered vans. Like the Hyundai isn't sold in the States while the Kia is. Now, what makes these potentially interesting is that it looks like hydrogen-powered versions are in the works. And yeah, look, I know it's not electric, but hydrogen fuel cells are sort of much more like traditional EVs than they are gas cars, and if you think about it. Now, while there's no plan for an electric version of the Hyundai that I could find, there appears to be an electric version of the Kia in the works, but at the earliest it might be available by 2025, and that's, you know, look, there's basically no other info on specs or pricing for this. So as cool as hydrogen is, there's plenty of issues. First thing, I bet a lot of you guys have never actually seen a hydrogen refueling station. I mean, I've seen one, I think. There might be two, or maybe there's even three now in like the entirety of Los Angeles. These things are not cheap to build out either. Obviously, there's complexities in dealing with large quantities of hydrogen, and for hydrogen to be a real option, there's just going to have to be like massive infrastructure investment. I mean, compare that to installing level 3 fast chargers, and electric's just going to win this argument pretty easily, I think. So, might this be competition for Canoo? Well, the hydrogen thing, yeah, not really. But if Kia can deliver a real electric version of the Carnival, well, it's likely going to be pretty good. Maybe a little boring, but it's going to be good. But we're looking at 2025 at the earliest, so Canoo, again, has got a nice little head start here, it seems. Okay, so back to the UK, well, Germany, really, and let's take a look at the Mini Urbana. So before we dive in, we've already taken a pretty detailed look at not only the Urbana, but why it might make sense for Mini/BMW and Canoo to partner up in some way. I mean, could BMW swoop in and buy Canoo? I mean, it probably makes more sense than you think, and I'm not going to get into it right now, and if you're interested, when you're done here, check out our full video on the idea. Anyway, we'll move forward as if there was going to be like no collaboration between the two. And I'll go ahead and say this right now. This has the potential to be one of Canoo's best competitors. Conceptually, the two share sort of a lot of similarities. There's the whole maximum interior space on a small footprint thing, which is pretty obvious, and as is the importance of good design. I mean, yeah, both the Mini and the Canoo, well, they're just sort of both awesome looking, inside and out. And they're just so much more inspiring than any van on the market today, and it's not even really close. I mean, place either one of these side by side with the Chrysler Pacifica, for example. Yeah, exactly. So as you can imagine, there's not a whole lot of technical info available on the Mini, and they don't even really have a platform ready to build this thing on. So on the bright side though, BMW now has some serious cred when it comes to EVs. I mean, the i4 is pretty amazing, and the iX and the i7 are serious. If Mini is serious about building this, they'll be able to, and it's likely going to be really good, but it's going to be expensive, very, very expensive to build out a new platform. So even with the green light, don't expect these to be available until, I don't know, 2025 at the absolute earliest, and it's likely going to take another year or two after that. So Canoo sort of has the head start here, and it's, you know, it's really important to be first, and if you're not first, at least get to the party early. But having said all that, I'm still really curious about a Canoo Mini partnership. I mean, it could be something really amazing, actually. All right, so next up, we're gonna take a quick look at the Xbus. And just like the Mini, we've already covered this fella in a pretty detailed video, so by all means, check it out when you're done here. Okay, I'll say it, yeah, this thing is just awesome, and it's awesome for several reasons. First, there's basically a version for everybody. You wanna pick up, boom, here you go. You want a hippie beach convertible thing? Boom. Here you go. How about a camper version? Yep, you guessed it. Boom, here you go. You've got a cool little platform, and there's seemingly like no shortage of top hats you could bolt onto the skateboard deck. And then there's more good news. The price. Yep. Look, it really looks like you'll be able to get the one you want for like 25 grand, if not less. I mean, even the top of the line camper is gonna start at like 30 grand. So pretty amazing, right? Yeah. Okay, so if you haven't seen this before, you're probably just like all kinds of stupid excited right now, and I really hate to do this, but what can I say? I guess I'm a bit of a truth broker. Look, okay, there's some catches. I mean, some really, really big catches, and we just got to talk about it. So there's the power, and I kind of hope you're sitting down for this because this makes 20 horsepower. Yeah, 20. Now, apparently you're going to be able to tap into more power, up to 75 horsepower, but that's going to be for limited bursts. And then there's the top speed, which they're claiming to be 62 miles an hour, but I mean, that just might be the most optimistic and slightly downhill version of that. And add several hundred pounds of human and gear, and I mean, that's just going to tank pretty quick, I think. And then there's the range. So apparently there's a standard 15 kilowatt hour battery, which is going to translate to 120 miles of range, they claim. And personally, I think about half of that sounds more realistic. Now, you'll be able to add extra batteries to extend the range, so at least there's that. Lastly, if this makes it into production, and that is with a big if, it'll almost certainly be a Europe-only sort of thing, and like I suppose there's a chance that this could make it stateside, but it is pretty unlikely, which is kind of a shame. I mean, even with its pretty severe drawbacks, I mean, hey, I still think it's awesome, and I could see a diehard community popping up to support this thing. But I mean, look, let's be realistic. I mean, what would you expect for the price? With all that said, when it comes to Canoo, as cool as the Xbus is, it's just not real competition. I mean, even if it were to come stateside, there's just way too many compromises. I mean, I really don't think it's going to be all that safe to be cruising on the highway, especially if you're chugging along at like 25 miles an hour trying to climb that hill, right? Okay, so let's talk about Honda for a second. And obviously, any big-time car maker is more or less capable and should generally have the resources to build out bespoke EV platforms and architecture. Honda, even though you're like super late to the party, and like, what happened, fellas? I mean, seriously, what happened? Like, anyway, they've committed to introduce 30 brand new EVs by 2030. Let me remind you that these guys have been in the van biz for a while. Also, like, the Honda Odyssey is currently one of the best traditional family vans on the market, and beyond the assumption that they'd be, well, pretty dumb not to just build out an all-electric version of the Odyssey, there's just not that much specific info about their EV plans. Now, there is this leaked PowerPoint slide kind of thing that seems to show silhouettes of several of their upcoming EVs, and bam, right there in the middle. Yep, that sure looks like a van, all right. And it makes sense. I mean, 30 new EVs, I mean, at least one's got to be a van, right? Anyway, what does this all mean for Canoo? Well, Honda is massive and they make some very, very good cars for sure, but somehow they've seemed to completely miss this whole EV thing. But with their resources, they should be able to catch up pretty quickly. That said, I just can't imagine an all-electric Odyssey or something similar anytime soon. I mean, best case scenario is probably 2026 or even 2027. Again, giving Canoo kind of a nice head start. And then there's Buick. Yes, Buick. So back in June, GM announced that they're planning several new electric Buick models. What's interesting though is they seem to be focused on the Chinese market, and for some reason, and I totally don't get it, Buick is like Backstreet Boys big in China. Yeah, I know. I mean, it just sounds even too bizarre to make up, but it's true. So there's this like crazy market for ultra luxe minivans, and Buick is sort of cleaning up apparently. I mean, check out this Buick Century. I mean, yeah, it's sort of crazy, right? Anyway, so there's gonna be 5 brand new electric vehicles introduced there through 2025, and man, I don't know. I mean, this is Buick we're talking about. I'm sort of just boring myself right now, so why don't we just wrap up the Buick talk? I mean, I can't imagine there's going to be much like cross-shopping between Canoo and Buick, right? Yeah. Anyway, so look, there's a bunch of sort of interesting electric van options, and I'd peg the ID Buzz as potentially the biggest competition, at least in the short term for Canoo. But that's also a bit of narrow-minded thinking. And I'm willing to bet a lot of people looking to score a Canoo or an ID Buzz or even that crazy Mini if it actually happens. Well, they're also going to be looking at SUVs, surely, and even extended cab trucks to a lesser extent. I mean, this is why I'm just really curious what else you guys might be looking at, beyond Canoo. So by all means, please drop a comment. Let me know. Anyway, depending on, the comments, I mean, would you guys be interested in seeing sort of a wider net look at potential Canoo competition? I mean, look, I'll be honest, the college football season's pretty much over, so I'm gonna have a little extra time on my hands. Anyway, it's just exciting to think about how different the automotive landscape is gonna be in just another 3 or 4 years. I mean, the switch to electric is happening, and it's happening fast, and this is all just like, I don't know, tremendously exciting.